Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. So, Ed Reed out at Bethune-Cookman. Miami has a star-studded visitors list this weekend. And could Urban Meyer actually be on the short list of coaches to replace Jimbo Fisher if he indeed is fired this upcoming season? So, we'll start with the big story, Bethune-Cookman, Ed Reed. Now, I've done my best to try to kind of stay away from, discussing this. I obviously try to honestly not try to necessarily cover things that kind of everybody else is covering, but I do feel like that I do want to say something on this particular subject matter. However, and what it is that I want to say is that obviously what transpired on last week with Ed Reed going live, speaking about the condition of the campus as well as his coach's office, I do think that it was I'm not gonna say it was needed, but it was a somewhat call to action. And one of the things that I realized when people who did not attend HBCU speak on HBCU Matters, a lot of times the alumni from the HBCUs feel like you're attacking them personally, and some people actually get to the point whether they, you know, the first question they ask, well, did you attend HBCU? And my natural reaction is going to be, well, no, I didn't. And then there will say, well, then you don't need to speak on it. But I feel like because I have aunts, I have uncles, cousins, my mother, all attend HBCUs, have these particular type of discussions, I feel like I'm inclined to speak on these because I'm not speaking from my opinion. I'm speaking from individuals who went to these particular schools back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, 90s, and I have individuals that I know that attend HBCUs that are my age or older. And one of the constants that I hear when we have these particular discussions, which is not very often, but obviously these particular discussions have picked up as of recent with obviously the hiring of Dion Sanders and his subsequent departure away from Jackson State, right? And another thing was a constant. They also felt that Deion Sanders was not going to uplift all of the swag. It kind of goes back to that, what do you want to call it? I don't know if it was Richard Nixon or Ronald Reagan or maybe even Kennedy, one of those that made the statement that a high tide lifts all boats. So basically, Jackson State would be the high tide. And while Jackson State is being lifted up, the rest of the SWAC schools will be lifted up as well. Obviously, of course, we know that that did not, transpire, but it is something that, we could, really look at, right? And so obviously, Ed Reed gives a heartfelt departure away, speaking about the administrations. And I'm sure the thing that really, really ticked people off was by him saying, well, Dion was right. And I'm sure that's the last thing that those people want to hear. When I say those people, I'm not trying to differentiate myself from them, but I didn't go to HBCU, so technically y'all are those people that attended those particular schools. If I have to be more politically correct in the way that I'm addressing this particular issue, but I did a podcast. I have a podcast that I do. It's called a Paradigm 132 podcast, available on all streaming sites. And the reason that I'm saying this is because I did more of an in-depth episode around this, but it wasn't based on wasn't based on this Ed Reed situation. It was based on an opinion or just a thought process that Pamani Jones had that I heard him speak about on his TV show Game Theory. And I'm paraphrasing, but he basically spoke about how HBCUs are founded and grounded on the same mindset of the Ivy League schools. And what that means is that their academics education first, and then everything else after that is secondary. And so, how he felt that Deion Sanders coming in and trying to make athletics somewhat of the focal point, it was not going to work. And to be honest, looking back on it, but money was right. But the thing that I disagreed with him about was the fact that saying that putting athletics at the forefront um, would be bad or just kind of like frowned upon, right? And my thinking is this: right now, college football, if anybody's in the stock market, college football right now would be what you would call a growth stock, as well as a stock that pays a dividend. And if you have a stock like that, that is probably the best scenario that you have. A stock that you're gaining value with your shares, and then they're also giving you a dividend while also continuing to rise. It's a growth stock while also being a dividend paying stock at the same time. And the thing of it is that one of the main things that we hear when people talk about HBCUs is the advent of their underfunded, misappropriation of funds. Obviously, the big Tennessee State story, which I read a little bit about it, and I said, well, if that's the case of it, I think people need to present it in its correct way, not trying to take fault away from the state in their underfunding campaign. But if something has gone this long for that length of time without being caught sooner, then yeah, we need to look at administration. And that kind of goes back to what my aunts and uncle said, that that was the issue when they were there, and they were there in the '60s and the '70s. And in the '60s and the '70s, it was supposed to be more so of like, hey, we're in this thing together. But if you're already, but back then you still had butting of heads, then obviously that has just manifested itself and it has permeated and has continued to go on. And I'll make the statement to say I don't think a lot of these particular schools have been embracing of the recent, what do you want to call it, thrusting into the mainstream. I don't think they did. I noticed Dion saying that when he was talking about at the Celebration Bowl, when he talked about that maybe some people upstairs they did not like the way that they were going out to dominating games like that. And that could be very much true because this is kind of a close knit thing, and this type of domination could maybe bring about some level of envy. But we as outsiders who are not in it, we said, hey, this is gonna force everybody to pick their game up. Anyway, getting back to the Ed Reed situation. Obviously, the players made a petition. They want them to hire Ed back. Ed basically said what it was that they were going to try to do to help bring the program back up. And my honest opinion, my heart of hearts, I don't think that particular bridge can be repaired. I could be wrong, but I don't think it can be repaired. And at the same time, I think that the schools, um, once this blows over, once the Dion situation kind of runs its course, and once this Ed Reed particular situation runs its course, then it's back to status quo. It's back to business as usual. But it's unfortunate that it's like that. But I do think that it does shine a light on that while most people spend time talking about the retrogression of the inner city, I think it's time to shine a light to say, well, there's another subculture going on within this entire thing that also has faults, and they're not without fault as well. They have their shortcomings that also impact the greater good. But again, that's not something I want to talk about on this particular channel. I talk about those type of topics on my particular podcast, and again, it's Paradigm 132 podcast, right? So anyway, moving on. Miami battle. Miami, I looked at the list of the visitors that came in this past weekend, and it was a star-studded list. And the first thing that I thought about it was I thought about the Brandon Ennis statement, in which Brandon Ennis said that, "Hey, you're gonna have to show me. Basically, I don't wanna be the guinea pig. You're gonna have to show me what it is. You're gonna show me development." And I think that's going to ring true for this particular class that's coming up. I think that last year's class could, which obviously preseason, you could come off of Mario could sell what they did at Oregon, and also you could sell this particular year. Say, hey, you can see how talent devoid we are, in many places, and we still have depth deficiencies, across the board. And hopefully, some of those deficiencies are addressed in the portal. But if Mario's going to stick to his guns, in which I'm not just going to offer you just to offer you, you need to be able to contribute in some type of way. Then if it's not some quality out there, then we're just gonna move on. We're not just gonna sign a body to sign a body. But with the transfer portal and the way things are going now, you very well could just sign a 1 year body or maybe even a perceived 2 year body. And if you can get a body that you want, then you could just do the gentleman's handshake and say, hey, see you later. Thank you for your services, right? But that's just what it is. But I do think that this particular year is very, very important. This will be Mario's second full class, but his third overall class this upcoming year. And I think this particular class is going to be looking for on-field improvement. Like I said, I don't think you can sell. And then also at the same time, some of the freshmen and stuff like that, I think you're gonna have to see them, play not significant roles, but a lot of times some of these kids now I feel like that more time more than ever. I feel like a lot of these kids want to come in and start and play day one. And so I think you have to go through the weeds because if you get one of those guys and they don't start on day one, then you got the issue of roster retention, right? And I think there's going to be an issue moving forward, which is why I made my video some weeks back and said, "Can you rebuild what Clemson and Alabama had?" Right? But excuse me. But obviously, again, good good cast of guys from 2024 up to I believe 2026 guys and stuff like that. Some guys that are committed to some other schools, of course. We're down in a particular area. Looking at the campus. So I do think that this particular year is good. I think if we were able to manage 8 wins, I think we're in a good position to get some of these guys, especially if some of the wins are or maybe some of the losses are close. But I do think an 8 win season would call for us to maybe beat a team that we're not supposed to beat. I really honestly look at it, from that particular vantage point. I don't think 6 or 7 wins could possibly move the needle unless they're competitive 6 or 7 wins. But after this past year, we don't necessarily know what's going on. We don't know if the team or the guys that are still here, or even the freshmen that are on campus, are they bought fully in because we said it was buy-in last time around this same year, and we saw what transpired during the season. So hopefully we don't have a repeat of that because I think if we have a repeat of that, I don't think NIL or even Mario's best recruiting efforts could salvage this. So I think this particular year is very, very imperative, and I like some of the moves that we have done. Obviously, of course, in the portal as well as signing high school guys. But I do think that this particular class is gonna be the one that's gonna take the Brandon Ennis approach. Like really, truly, I need to see it. Right. So that's that. So lastly, I was listening to Minister Sports Zach Smith show, and he was saying it jokingly, but his co-host said something about Urban, and he was like, "Yeah, my guy's Urban. Hey, he's gonna be a coaching at A&M next year." Speaking about the 2024 season, and he was saying it jokingly, but I stopped and I thought I said, you know what? I didn't think about that. I said because Texas A&M has some things coming up. Obviously, with Oklahoma and Texas moving into the SEC, Sark seems to be having things going the way they wanted to go. Brent Venables, they get that quarterback and get that defense shored up. That could be something that they do, and Texas A&M has squandered every opportunity since Jimbo has been there. I think that 9-1 COVID year probably gave a lot of people reason to believe, but then they followed it up with the 21 season and then obviously the 2022 season. Now he went out and hired Bobby Petrino, and I think Bobby Petrino would not take this job unless he was actually going to be calling the plays. So I don't know how that goes. And whatever we think about Bobby Petrino, I'll say this: Bobby Petrino got an NFL position, and I don't think it was a Cliff Kingsbury type of deal. Teams wanted Bobby Petrino. Obviously, it didn't work out. We saw how that ended, and Bobby Petrino has had some low character issues. Same thing goes for Jimbo Fisher. So, which gets me into my thing that if Jimbo Fisher is fired mid-season, that's the card that you got to go with. You have to go with the Urban Meyer card because you have already showed that high character is not something that you guys are looking for. Even though I think Urban had matured as a coach from his time at Florida to Ohio State, even though making the decision to keep Zach Smith on staff with the allegations that he had going against him. But I think they would have to roll the dice indeed if that happened. Now, I went and looked at their particular schedule because I know everybody's been looking at the Colorado schedule, but I went and looked at their schedule. And they have a second game of the year. I think they have a slate of Auburn, Alabama, um, Tennessee, Ole Miss. I think like kind of like in that like in the month of October. I think they have like a slate of games like back to back. So they're gonna figure out what it is that they have, and if it's not going the right way, I could see them firing Jimbo Fisher mid-season, and potentially with what's at stake, you have to roll the dice and you have to bring in Urban Meyer. Um, Obviously, now I know some people we're gonna look back at the Jaguar situation, but I look at it like this: he would be seemingly 2 years removed from that because that seems to be the time that coaches get 2 years away from maybe the spotlight, and then you bring them back in. And I'm sure that he's ripping and roaring to get back in there. They have some talent on the team, so that could be something interesting to monitor. My only issue would be is that I would have liked to see us play them with Urban Meyer as the coach. If that happens, hypothetically speaking. But yeah, there's that. But as always, man, like, share, subscribe. It's all about you. Peace.